I'm pretty sure that I'm not the only one who's noticed how much negativity there is aimed at men right now in social media, in politics, in research papers. It's so common to see a lot of, I guess, anti-male attitudes, this idea around toxic masculinity, that men are the cause of a lot of problems, this general idea that all things masculine are bad. And I know that's an overgeneralization. I know not everyone believes it, but it's such a common trope that we see right now. And that's what I want to talk to today, because I think that this is highly driven by a quirk of human behavior, of human psychology, that hurts not just men, it hurts women as well, but especially men, and makes the society we live in worse and prevents us from making much needed improvements. So this all begins with trauma. Now, when we are traumatized, as we all have had in our lives, especially as children and adults, we've all received painful events. And if we don't manage them, we can deal with this in three ways. One, at some point as adults, we look at these pains and traumas and we think them through, we feel them through, we discuss them with trusted people, maybe professionals, psychologists, psychiatrists. We go through them and we process them as adults, and we manage them. That's the ideal. And some of us have done that with some of our pains, with some of our traumas, some of us haven't. Some people are more open or less open to change and self-development, but that's the ideal. But there's two other ways we can deal with it. Number two is where we go implosive. That is, we take all that pain that we feel and we turn it inside, and we become self-hating, we become mean, cruel to ourselves. The things we say, you're fat, you're ugly, you're disgusting, no woman's gonna like you, no man's gonna like you, you deserve to be beaten. You're a terrible human being, you're toxic. All these nasty things that I know a lot of you watching do to yourselves. It's when we go implosive with our pains and traumas. Third way we can deal with it is we can go explosive. So that doesn't just have to be explosive like verbally or physically, although it can be, right? But we take all our pain and we turn it outwards to other people. We become manipulative, we can become controlling, we can become nasty, we can become physically violent, become verbally aggressive and violent. All these mean ways that we mistreat other people because of our own traumas that aren't being managed. And guys, if you're finding this topic as interesting as I do, and I find this stuff fascinating, please give me a thumbs up, subscribe. It helps me a ton. It helps me to continue to make more content like this. Now, I know most of you watching are probably more likely to be implosive, but the explosive thing is quite common. And I know that both men and women can be explosive, but if you think about how people who are dealing with the traumas implosively, they tend to be more depressed, they tend to be turned inwards, they tend to be self-hating, they have a low self-esteem, they have anxiety. Now, a lot of these are not considered masculine. For most women, they see a man acting like that, he doesn't feel masculine. A woman can express herself in that way and still be considered a very feminine woman. So as a result, men are generally pushed on, as a generality, into being explosive in the way they manage unresolved trauma. Women tend to go implosive. And this becomes very tricky because of the psychological way we as humans manage our reactions to these people. If you picture two different women, and one woman is implosive, and she's upset, she's been really hurt by a couple of men the last few years, and she's depressed, she thinks she's ugly, she thinks no man's ever gonna love her, she thinks she doesn't deserve to be loved. She has all these horrible feelings, and she expresses them, and she's crying. How do you feel when you see her? You probably, unless you're a psychopath, you want to take care of her, you want to hug her, you want to tell her it's all okay, that she deserves to be loved, right? That the people who hurt her had no right hurting her, right? You want to support and help in any way that you can. For most of the time, that's how we react to people who are implosive. When we react to, if we imagine a woman who is instead just been hurt by men, she's feeling all the same feelings, but instead what does she do? She becomes controlling of her next boyfriend, vindictive. She tries to control where he goes, who he sees, what he does. She nitpicks at him. She's cruel. She makes him feel this small. She makes him feel like, you know what, everything you do is a bit of an idiot thing to do. She laughs about him behind his back with her friends. And you look at this and you think, that is a horrible person. I mean, really, how do you want to support this woman? Do you want to help this woman? Do you think this woman deserves love and care and a hug and some support and someone to tell her that she deserves to be loved, that the people who hurt her? No, we don't want to offer the support. We don't want to help that person. As a society, we don't. And this is where it really begins to hurt men a lot because, again, men are pushed to be explosive in the way they express their anger. I don't just mean domestic violence, and I don't just mean I'm being verbally aggressive. I mean being controlling, being manipulative, being coercive. That's what men are pushed to do more and more of the time. And it's difficult. We like having villains. We like having heroes, and we like having victims, right? Someone to point the finger at and say, "Ah, let's burn them at the stake." We like that. We're kind of, it's part of our culture. It's kind of part of our religion very often, if you're religious, right? It's embedded into who we are, into the way we're raised. You know, if you imagine something particularly pernicious and disgusting, most of us have known at least one woman who's been the victim of domestic violence. And when you talk to the woman, she will often say, we'll say to her, "Why don't you leave this guy?" And she'll say, "But you don't understand what he's been through. He's been so hurt when he was younger, and he doesn't mean it. He loves me. He really loves me, and I love him too. And he can get better. I know he can get better. And he's been so badly hurt. He just needs to." And how do most people respond? By gut instinct, right? Is no, he's a monster. He doesn't love you. If someone loves you, they don't hit you. He only wants to control you. He wants to just use you as his emotional punching bag. He's a horrible human being. He's disgusting. Any man who does that isn't a real man. And I know those feelings because I've had female friends be victims of domestic violence, and all I want to do is, all right, let me meet this guy in a dark alley and see how brave he really is. I know the feeling. But she's right. She's right in that this man is traumatized. This man has pain, so much pain that's unresolved. He probably does love her. There's the reality of it, but he's traumatized. He doesn't know how to manage the trauma, the pain, the stuff that he hasn't dealt with. Now, she shouldn't stick around. Absolutely not. Of course not. She needs to get away. Her responsibility is to herself and her own well-being. And as friends, as people of support, I understand trying to dehumanize him to try to convince her to get away. I do understand that, of course. And domestic violence is serious. And I want to point out that when we're talking about, again, explosive ways of dealing with trauma, I don't want to take responsibility away from people. It's not, I don't want to, this doesn't exist in a vacuum away from responsibility. If you're an adult and you're hurting other people, you're in the wrong, right? And especially if you're doing something illegal, there has to be a repercussion for those actions. Period. I'm not arguing that. But how do we handle those people after they've been punished is critical. Because if you take someone, a man who abuses a woman, we know that the repeat offense is super high with these men. Because we're not offering any form of support to deal with the trauma that created the problem. We're only dealing with the symptom, which is the act of domestic violence. And so we don't want to support them. We don't offer it to them. And it doesn't just have to be things like domestic violence. If a lot of you guys have read a book called The Game by Neil Strauss. It's like the epitome of pickup artistry, book written in the early 2000s about a guy who was super nerdy. He was a writer, and he went out and he became great with women. And it was a good book. It was interesting. But what's even more interesting is if you read one of his next books that he wrote later called The Truth, which is later on down the line, and Neil Strauss is struggling with sex addiction. He's realized that he could use dating and picking up women as a way to deal with his trauma, his unresolved pain from his childhood. As it turned out, it was a mother he had troubles with. He had other things too, but that was a big one. And it was getting in the way of his ability to have a healthy relationship with women. He wanted to stay with his wife, but he was cheating on her, and there's this whole thing going on. He wanted to be a better human being, so he checked himself in to be treated. And what did he get? Shame. He got personal attacks. He got made to feel like he was a monster. In fact, he was told, unless you recognize that you're a disgusting human being, you will never get better. You don't say that to someone who's a victim of trauma, but that's the way we're dealing with perpetrators of explosive trauma response. Right? We do that, and we do it with every aspect almost of masculine expression of trauma, right? Every guy who I've known who has treated women badly because he wants to get laid a lot, women like to say he's just a horrible human being. He's doing horrible things, and women shouldn't put up with it. Of course not. But he is also someone who is traumatized. He's someone who's got pain, suffering, feels unloved, unlovable. That's why he's acting out in that way. And individuals, of course, should be angered by it. If you're a woman, you've been hurt by a man, you shouldn't put up with it. You don't have to hug him better and hang around and feel bad for him. Oh, you poor thing. No, you're a victim. Fine. I accept that. Like, you've been hurt, get away from that person. But as a society, we need to not fall prey to our desire to make everything into something that's good and evil. I'm big on this because this is making society a worse place to live in. If we don't support domestic violence, the abusers, if we don't support them, they're going to recommit those acts of violence. If we don't support men who are hurting women, not violently, I mean like, players, things like this. If we don't provide support as a society, they're going to recommit those acts. If we don't take women who are misandrist and, the extreme nasty type of feminism, not all feminists are bad, but the extreme nasty misandry type, if we don't offer them support as a society, they will continue to be bad and try to make the world a worse place for men. We need to have this underlying compassion to try to offer support. And yes, it hurts men. And yes, it's a big piece of why men are the victims of so much hate and anger. I know they're the perpetrators as well of some pain, but they were the victims first, very often. And I know not everyone wants to change. Not everyone's willing to change. Not everyone's capable of change. Narcissists are famously immune to therapy, right? In fact, therapy is usually counterindicated for narcissism. It doesn't work, often makes them worse. Psychopaths, pedophiles, things like this. I know they're resistant to change. But the support needs to be there for all the people who are open to change. I know as a teenager, I treated people worse than I do as a 42-year-old. As a 20-year-old, same deal. With women, yes, I treat women better, and as I've gotten older than I did when I was younger. I have less trauma. I've dealt with more stuff. I've grown. I've tried to self-develop. I'm not proud of how I've behaved all the time. I wasn't like a monster, but I'm not proud of everything I've done. But I've tried to grow, and as a result, I'm a better person. Most people are capable of change, but they've got to be given the opportunities to. I had those opportunities. I had the right environments around me. And so I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. I know it's not a sexy topic. It's a dangerous topic. It's something politicians don't want to talk about. It's something policymakers don't want to talk about. It's something that blogs and podcasts are scared of talking about, because there seems to be this society inability to both recognize that someone's done something bad and that maybe they're also suffering at the same time. Like, we know it logically, but emotionally we struggle with it and we don't want to talk about it. But we need to talk about it for society to be better. We need to talk about it because men need support. Society has forced them into the role of being expressing themselves explosively, so we need to offer them support. That's the least we can do for them. And I'd love to hear your thoughts. I know it's a controversial topic, so go ahead, tap away, let me know. Let's have a discussion about it in the comments. If you've liked this video, please give me a thumbs up, subscribe. That helps me a ton, and I look forward to seeing you in my future videos.